You're gonna have to get us all today.
This pack was brought to you by Ryan Westberg's team.
Of course.
Toss-up one. Among the institutions praised in the final chapter of this work is the Artel, as well as others that fulfill the title functions, such as Esnafs and Umkari. This work's third chapter relies on part of the ethnographic work documented in Peter Kolben's The Present State of the Cape of Good Hope, while its fourth chapter contains an extensive discussion of Iceland and concludes with the claim that medieval cities were not merely political organizations for the protection of certain political liberties, but rather an attempt at organizing this work's title concept. Written while the author was in exile in England, this work is partially a response to T.H. Huxley's essay, The Struggle for Existence. The title of all the chapters of this work begin with this work's title and examine the tutorial concept among animals, savages, barbarians, the medieval city, and ourselves. For 10 points, identify this philosophical exploration of altruistic behavior.
Mutual aid.
That's right.
What? Oh, mutual aid.
Let's go Hawkins mutual aid. Here is your bonus. Work at this extensive cave site began in the late 5th century CE by orders of Emperor Zhao Wen. For 10 points each, identify this massive complex of caves featuring Buddhist statuary on the Yi River that was likely begun after similar sites at Magao and Yungang. Is this the one in
Sure, but I don't know what it's called.
Is this the one in Yungang, the biggest one?
Oh,
What do you got? These are called the Longmen Grottos or the Dragon's Gate Caves. The largest grotto at Longmen features the Fengjiang Temple, which houses a 57-foot tall Buddha with a face said to be modeled on this female sovereign during the Tang Dynasty, who proclaimed herself the founder of the Zhou Dynasty in 690 CE.
Who's it, Jeff?
Yeah. Guyang Cave in the Longmen Grottos features 300 niches with over 2,000 statues in this style, a fusion of Hellenistic and Southeast Asian art named for a region now in northwest Pakistan that was home to the city of Taxila.
Actually.
No, it's Gandharan, or whatever. Anyway, you got 10 points. Toss up 2. This man developed the idea of linking 4-hydroxy-2-cyclopentanone with C7 and C8 side chain units, which is known as the three-component coupling synthesis of prostaglandins. A compound developed by this man enabled the industrial synthesis of the main form of menthol from myrcene using the isomerization of allylic amines. A reaction named for this man uses a catalyst that contains bidentate diphosphine ligands and naphthyl rings. In this man's namesake reaction, enantioselective ketones can be converted to secondary alcohols using the compound BiNAP, as well as part of its chiral ruthenium catalyst. For 10 points, name this Japanese chemist who names an asymmetric hydrogenation reaction and who won the 2001 Nobel Prize with Sharpless and Knowles.
Oh, sorry. Sharpless. Is there anything with Fukuyama?
No,
Okay.
no felony.
Which one might be a due
Nah.
This is Ryoji Niori.
Toss
Toss of 3. In 2002, Wheeler Thaxton produced an English translation of this book, updating the 1905 translation by Annette Beveridge. A frequently reproduced translation from this book depicts its main character laying out the Garden of Fidelity. It spends much time discussing the author's love for melons, and describes how its author grieves for his mother by reading contemporary poets like Banai of Herat and Asafi. Because his father was a drunkard, this work's author doesn't have his first glass of wine until age 29, leading to a 10-year period of heavy drinking that lasted until a vow of temperance before the Battle of Kanwa. Its first English translations were mostly derived from a Persian version created by the son of Bayram Khan, though it was written in the Chagatai dialect of Turkic. It begins with the author's declaration at age 12 to become king of Fergana.
Epic Manas.
That is not correct. For 10 points, name this autobiography, which chronicles the life of the founder of the Mughal dynasty.
Okay, this thing was called. That over my.
No, it's the Babur Nama, or the Memoirs of Babur.
That's right.
Or I would have accepted Babur's autobiography.
Damn it.
Before I mentioned it.
Memoirs.
Before you mentioned it? Or?
Well, I said autobiography, so once I say autobiography, no longer. Toss it for that. This event was forced to end prematurely due to an outbreak of an epidemic known as the English Sweats. An important mediating role at this event was played by Martin Bucer. Eberhard von der Town was dispatched to sabotage this event after being instructed by Elector John to ensure that no alliance resulted from it. That's over here.
Field of Cloth of Gold.
Say again?
Field of the Cloth of Gold.
That is incorrect. Minus 5. Despite those efforts, this event did result in a document known as its namesake Sketch of an Alliance. Urbanus Regius fell ill prior to this event, which led to Michael Agricola attending it in his place. This event occurred partially due to the request of Johannes Oecolampadius, who was present at it, and thanks to Bucer's efforts, a closer agreement than was reached at this event was attained during the 2 following Concordatia Württembergensis. This event was organized by Philip the Magnanimous, the Landgrave of Hesse, and produced 15 namesake articles, despite the remaining point of disagreement on the nature of the Lord's Supper. For 10 points identified this 1529 event, at which Philip Melanchthon and Martin Luther argued theological closures of England.
Concordant of Verbs.
No, it's the Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Toss of 5. One individual who served as head editor of this publication for only a year was succeeded by Chuck Lane and wrote the book Martyr's Day about the First Gulf War before being killed covering the Iraq invasion in 2003. One of the original founders of this publication coined the term manufacture of consent in his book Public Opinion. This publication's notable cultural criticism included a space called the back of the book. This publication ignited controversy with an issue featuring a smoking black woman holding a baby on its cover under the words Day of Reckoning, and hosted a roundtable on First Demon Murray's The Bell Curve. Plagiarist Ruth Shallett and fabulous Stephen Glass were both discovered to be frauds while writing.
Wall Street Journal.
That is incorrect. While writing for this publication, founded by Herbert Crowley and Walter Lippmann, more recently this publication underwent a period of turmoil when its new owner, Facebook millionaire Chris Hughes, fired editor Franklin Ford and installed Gabriel Snyder and Guy Vidra in key positions. For 10 points, identify this occasionally liberal publication, once owned by Marty Peretz, whose writing staff included Andrew Sullivan and Leon Wieseltier. That is correct. Here's your bonus. Together with his pupil Posidonius, this philosopher is thought to exemplify Middle Stoicism, which was characterized by the incorporation of pre-Stoic thought. For 10 points each, identify this Athenian Stoic, who succeeded his teacher Antipater of Rhodes as the head of the Athenian Stoic school. None of his writings survive, so we only know of his thought by reference to other philosophers.
Cleanthes was a guy. Cleanthes.
This is Panaetius of Rhodes. The philosophy of Panaetius was particularly influential on Cicero, who incorporated much of Panaetius' work into this major work of his. According to Henry Sidgwick, this treatise did more than any other to communicate the morality of the ancients to medieval and modern Europe.
Tusculan disputation. Tusculan disputation.
On duty, or Day of Ficus. This man wrote about Posidonius' decision to abandon the Stoics in his treatise on the doctrines of Plato and Hippocrates, but is better remembered as a physician from Pergamum who chronicled the Antonine Plague.
That's kind
Toss of 6. A result by Krutanich and Karatzis uses convex analysis to generalize this result to families of functions. A 1951 paper by Danzig and Bald answered 2 questions left open by the paper that derived this result by demonstrating both an existence proof as well as a necessity and sufficiency proof. This result can be visualized by depicting it as an optimal receiver operating characteristic curve. In signal detection theory, this statement is equivalent to the maximization of the true positive rate for some upper bound on the false negative rate. This statement was first introduced by its namesakes in the paper on the problem the most efficient test of statistical hypotheses. 10 points, identify the statement, which holds that for a given threshold and significance level, the likelihood ratio test that prefers one of 2 hypotheses depending on a critical value of the threshold is the more powerful one. The most powerful one, actually. Okay, that's time. This is the name and Pearson lemma. Toss of 7. This character kept itching powder, a knife to cut purses, and burrs to place on men's heads like horns, symbolic of his coupling them in the 26 pockets of his gown. In one episode, this character shits himself after mistaking the cat Rhodolargus for the devil while in the dark hold of a ship, leading him to rattle off 15 synonyms for shit. This character proposes a plan to build a city wall from Parisian women's vaginas, arguing that they are cheaper than common stones. That proposal was called representative of the theme of fecundity, not misogyny, in a study considering this figure as one aspect of the carnivalesque by Mikhail Bakhtin. Laurent Cuillère argued for a definition of the novel as a space in which moral condemnation is suspended in an essay titled For the Day This Character No Longer Makes People Laugh. The day this character no longer makes people laugh, partly focusing on this character's murder of the shepherd Dindinal by tricking his sheep into running across a ship's deck. For 10 points, what companion of Pantagruel killed? Say again?
Gargantua.
That's Nick 5. Journeys to the Oracle of the Holy Bottle to find out if he should marry. It has a name meaning he who will try anything.
Bad urge.
That's right.
Oh well.
Your bonus. For matter with constant densities, a formula developed by Kimura, Takamura, and Yokomakura gives the probability of this process occurring as A times the cosine of delta plus B times the sine of delta plus C with A, B, and C determined experimentally. And point each. Identify this process described by a matrix named for Pontecorvo, Maki, Nakagawa, and Sakata.
Something about matrix.
The Japanese. Okay. What do you have? Okay, the correct answer is neutrino oscillations. For oscillation between two neutrino flavors, the probability of oscillation is proportional to the sine squared of twice this quantity, which differentiates between mass states and flavor states.
Sure.
This is called the mixing angle. The delta in the KTY formula is a measure of the violation of the symmetry in which a particle becomes an antiparticle and its position coordinates are reflected. CP. There's 10 points. Here's toss-up 8. At the end of a series of two conflicts known by this name, Ranuccio II Farnese was accused of murdering a bishop that had been appointed by Pope Innocent X to the namesake city. That city was then destroyed and a namesake column was erected. This name was also applied to an Iron Age archaeological culture of Lusitanians and Milesians in the northwest Iberian Peninsula, which lasted to the Roman era and produced Celtic goldwork. A leader of this last name, known as the Lion of the Andes, was overthrown by his lieutenant Juan Vicente Gomez.
Castro?
That's 15 points.
Should have gone on first as a poor Castro.
Oh,
That's a thing.
it is a thing. I'm stopping you, man. Your only limitation is yourself. Here's your bonus. This artist, best known sculptor, was cast in bronze by his brothers after his death, which points each. Named this French artist of the sculptor Horse, who also created a study of a facade for a proposed Maison Cubiste for the 1906 Salon des Hommes. Cubist types.
Excuse me.
What have you got for me?
Mark.
It's Raymond Duchamp. Duchamp Villon, actually. Duchamp Villon terracotta bust of this French poet featuring an enlarged bald pate is thought to be a retort to a bust of him executed by Rodin, who also created an illustrated version of this poet's best-known collection. As an art critic, this man wrote The Painter of Modern Life.
Huysmans? No, this is Baudelaire.
What do you got?
Baudelaire.
Yeah. The Duchamp brothers formed the core of this section d'or, which brought together many of the leading Cubist painters, such as this artist of simultaneous contrast and simultaneous windows on the city. Holy shit, this one's fucking hard.
Thanks, Gary.
I didn't write it. Anyway, what you got?
No,
It's Robert Delaunay. Anyway, you got 10 minutes for Baudelaire. Here's a toss
that's
next. This book's chapter 19 shares an all capitals reference to the traditionalists of plagiarism with this chapter 1 and precedes it. A book that appears later in this book A poem that appears later in this book proclaims the pure products of America go crazy. Another poem in this book begins, the crowd at the ball game is moved uniformly by a spirit of uselessness which delights them. The authors claim that in description, words adhere to certain objects and have the effect on sense of oysters or barnacles, is illustrated by a poem describing plants that enter the world naked, cold, uncertain of all, save that they enter. Published in 1923, this book is named for its first poem, a response to The Wasteland, and includes its author's poem, The Red Winged Arrow.
Let's bring it on.
That's right.
Yeah.
10 points. This poet's Epilium Hale survives in fragmentary form. For tip or teach. What teacher and later rival Apollonius of Rhodes also created a bibliography of works of the Library of Alexandria called the Pennates.
Oh, it's Calvin.
Yeah. Callimachus is best known for this collection, which begins with the reply to the Telchines and includes the love story of Acontius and Cydipede.
Yeah. I don't know. So it'd be like, I don't write those forever. I don't know.
What did he write?
Forever.
It's the Aetia.
Okay.
Most classic scholars believe that Catullus added the lines about the Ritus Nuptialis in his famous translation of a Callimachus poem from the Aetia that was taken as an inspiration by Alexander Pope in writing this poem about the violation of Arabella Fervor.
Break the law.
India. 10 points.
20.
Oh yeah, that's right, 20.
Steal our
All right. Toss-up 10. Listening to one of these works by this composer was described as like staring at a cow for 45 minutes by Aaron Copland. The penultimate one of these pieces contains a third movement cavatina scored only for strings. The third of these works by this composer contains a moderato crescente third movement and includes a solo part for a natural trumpet in E flat that was inspired by a bugler who often missed the octave and instead landed on the seventh. In the second of these pieces, a harp plays the notes of the Westminster chimes. The first of these pieces opens with a brass fanfare, followed by a chorus singing "Behold the Sea Itself."
Oh, are these Vaughan Williams movies?
Yes.
They are.
They are. You get 10 points.
Good job.
Here's your bonus. This novel opens with the MC of Tropicana welcoming the crowd in English and Spanish for 10 points each. Identify this mostly plotless novel, which features the wordplay of Bustrophedon, a dead character whose voice is presented on tape, and the adventures of the photographer Kodak. Spelled C-O-D-A-C.
Super cat.
No, this is Three Trap Tigers. In Three Trap Tigers, Guillermo Cabrera Infante parodied the writing styles of other Cuban authors in a section about the murder of this historical figure in Animal Farm. This figure is represented by Snowball Paulie.
I've never read it.
It's Schwab.
Give the better answer.
Trotsky.
It's a much better answer.
That's why I looked at there.
One of those parodies makes fun of this author who was declared Cuba's national poet by the Castro regime in 1961. He first gained fame with 8 short poems based on the Afro-Cuban song music and wrote the poem Sensa Maya. No, it's Nicholas Guillen. You got 10 points.
And after 10, I have 100 to 50.
That sounds right.
And like this team is, they're scoring higher than 10 points on bonus. And
All right, toss 11.
I was trying to be exciting.
A pigeon arising in this nation arose between several different ethnic groups working in the pearling industry. Fanny Cochran Smith attempted to preserve one language spoken in this country, and another unusual language spoken here has no words for egocentric coordinates. The aversive case is a unique feature of one group of languages spoken here. A pigeon of 2 languages spoken in this nation is the origin of the term bung, meaning dead. Dialects of another language spoken in this nation include one which uses the word gammon for joking and darting for cool, and another which Anthony Burgess called a sort of fossilized cockney. For 10 points, in this country whose other spoken languages include the eastern and western central Torres Strait Islander and several languages.
Australia.
In Australia?
And fossilized
Australia. Here's your bonus.
Slang, isn't it?
Answer the following about Chinese Communist propaganda for 10 points each. Propaganda hero Wang Jingji was nicknamed Iron Man for his tireless, but also useless, work on the PRC's production of this commodity, especially at Daqing. Earlier, Wang had worked at this type of production at UMenn. You got it.
There was a Soviet guy saying.
What do you guess?
Steel.
It's oil. This man, who acted as a propaganda director for Jiangxi Soviet, famously stated that Mao was 70% right and 30% wrong. This man was denounced as the #2 capitalist roader at another stage of his career.
Sandy, yeah. I think this is probably that. That would be my guess.
This is perhaps the most famous Chinese propaganda hero via his forged diary. Never doing anything particularly heroic, he was lauded for his legendary loyalty to Mao Zedong and his perfect acceptance of Mao. That is 20 points.
What good Chinese people you are.
Toss of 12. An anthology in this language includes a film about a multi-car crash caused by a photo artist's sheet metal painting of a smiling crucified Jesus. Films in this language include The House of Joy and The Restaurant of the World, part of the anthology Pearls of the Deep. Another film in this language sees 7 picnickers suddenly surrounded by a bunch of goons and forced into an imaginary jail a man creates by drawing a line around them in the dirt with his heel. The allegory, a report on the party and the guests, preceded another film in this language in which a man buys drinks to bribe his town to include his pudgy daughter in a beauty contest in the title event, whose food and prizes are stolen before a climactic fire. That film is The Fireman's Ball. For 10 points, name is...
Check.
Good job.
Here's your bonus. In his namesake book outlining this argument, William Lane Craig tries to invert the story of Tristram Shandy and fails, and he also uses the Borda Guth-Vilenkin theorem to uphold it for 10 points each. Name this argument for the existence of God, which Craig named in honor of a medieval Islamic tradition. What you got?
Sufi argument.
This is called the Kalam cosmological argument. Craig's KCA partly relies on his assertion that an actual one of these things cannot exist, while potential ones can. The absurdity of actual ones of these things is illustrated by Craig using Hilbert's Hotel.
Trinity.
Yeah. Craig's KCA also relies on the truth of the A theory of this thing, which was contrasted with his B theory in a paper by J. Newman Taggart that proclaimed that this thing is not real.
Hi.
That's right. 20 points. 13. Victor Silverman and Susan Stryker directed a documentary about this event, which featured an event with community-like liaison Elliot Blackstone. The NTCU was established after this event, some of whose participants were members of the youth organization organized by the Gilda Memorial Church called the Vanguard. This disturbance supposedly began after a patron threw a cup of coffee to an officer's face, and it took place in an establishment found at the corner of Turk and Taylor in the Tenderloin district. The group that rioted in this event were traditionally excluded from gay bars, and it occurred 3 years before Stonewall. Gunpoint's named the supposed first queer uprising in the United States, whose instigators were transsexuals eating at a restaurant in San Francisco. It's time. It's called the Confidence Cafeteria Riot. Toss-up 14. One source says that a participant in this event was serving as a champion of Beli, the supreme god of light. It might have been caused by the theft of a plover or lapwing, or the theft of a white robot and greyhound dog, which one side refused to return. That side gained an edge during this event by singing a song that caused a magic cauldron of immortality to fail, so that only foul smoke was produced when dead men were thrown in it. That side finally triumphed by figuring out the name of a woman called Akron, resulting in a victory for the Sons of Dawn. This event, described in the Book of Taliesin, sees the brothers Amathon and Gwydion defeat the Lord of Onlin. For 10 points, name this event in Celtic myth in which the forest...
The Battle of Magdred.
No. Nick 5. In which the forest morphs into an army.
Oh.
A March of the Trees.
I'm not going to take that.
That's not-
Battle of the Trees or Cognido. 15. Robert Beaumont formulated a theory to explain the rise of ancient Corinth, focusing on its trade for this substance along a route to several towns in Illyria, including Damastium. In classical era Athens, the substance was used to create the so-called laureate owls, which drew their name from the Laurian region where this material was.
Silver.
Yeah.
That's it.
15.
That's
Silver.
Shouldn't be a.
Ooh, that one
Your bonus. The first man and first woman are assisted by this figure after water buffalo creates a huge flood. 10 points named the trickster god in Navajo mythology. In another story, this figure marries the changing bear maiden and turns her evil.
Coyote.
Yeah. During the creation of the world, Coyote once gets impatient with the black god and tosses a blanket containing one of these objects. The black god's temple also contains several of these.
Stars.
Yeah. This Navajo culture-bound illness is caused by contact with a spirit called a chingi. It's typically caused by unresolved grief.
Oh, what was that called? I think this is an episode of Gargoyles.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Oh.
Okay, it's called ghost sickness.
Yeah.
So after 15, I have a score of 75 to 130.
Okay.
Very close game. Toss-up 16. In 2008, the exhibition, The Baroque World of this artist, was held at several American museums and marked the first major U.S. retrospective of his work in 30 years. That exhibition created the development of this artist's style, credited the development of this artist's style to an early still life of a mandolin with an extremely small central hole. His public sculptures include a 5-ton bronze nude in front of London's Liverpool Street station called Broadgate Venus. After reading a Seymour Hersh article in the New Yorker, he was inspired to paint a 56-piece series, which includes several scenes of dogs snarling and attacking a blindfolded man. A giant man with an unbuttoned... over here.
Okay.
That's right, you.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Is there more than 10 points for good work?
Here's your bonus. One ruler of this polity was executed by the Mongols after allegedly poisoning his rival Yuri's captive wife. His son Dmitri killed Yuri, but was himself executed for this act by the Golden Horde, as was his younger brother, Grand Prince Alexander, for 10 points each. In this northeastern Russian city, an early rival to Moscow during the Apennine period, whose last ruler, Mikhail III, declared himself an obedient younger brother to Ivan, but was ultimately besieged and fled to Lithuania, whereupon the city was incorporated into Moscow's hegemony.
I have no idea.
No, it's Tver. During
Yeah,
the
that's-
struggle with Lithuania and Tver, Moscow under Dmitry Donskoy had won this 1380 battle, fought against the Golden Horde under Mamai, defeating the Mongol army and convincing the Lithuanians under Yagyel to retreat without fighting. Despite later Mongol retrenchments, this victory marked the beginning of Muscovite independence.
Cool guy.
Yeah. Dmitry Donskoy's grandson was involved in the only war of succession for the Principality of Moscow, fight first against his uncle Yuri, then against Yuri's sons Dmitry Shemyaka, and a man of this name known as the Squint-Eyed. Donskoy's grandson also of this name won the Civil War, despite being blinded in the process. What you got?
Simon.
Huh?
Simon.
Basil.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, just for me.
10 points. 17. The Cosenza variant of this protein has around 10% of the activity of its normal form, and other variants of it include ones named for Harissa and the Mediterranean. And that analyzing uterine tissue from heterozygous women with A and B variants of this protein led Linder, Gartler, and Townsend et al. To show that fibroids originate from single myometrial cells. Patients with low levels of this enzyme sometimes show bite cells on pathology and should avoid dapsone and primquine. This enzyme causes a reaction that produces a lactone and is the first in the pathway whose final products are NADPH and ribosphine phosphate. It is the namesake of the most common hereditary enzyme disorder, which can be triggered by oxidative stresses like eating fava beans. For 10 points, name this enzyme that catalyzes the first step in the pentose phosphate pathway by removing a hydrogen from a certain phosphorylated sugar.
Glucose dehydrogenase.
No. Actually, maybe I can prompt you on that. I don't know. I'll prompt you.
Glucose phosphatase.
No, that's not correct. What you got there?
I don't really have anything. Glucose dephosphatase.
No. It's glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. I don't know. You gave me half of what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Which wasn't enough. Class of 18. The Bisman form of this deity is the black leader of a group called the Guardian Kings in Jewish tradition. A ceremony in which a lead stone is dropped on a person's head honors this deity, who can appear in a single eternal form, or as either 33 or 99 different gods, personifying concepts like time, desire, and the road. He seems to share his name with the Polynesian deity whose wife Papa cheats on him with Rangi, leading him to spear Rangi in the leg. He created the sun Koyash, and he battles the Dark Lord Erlik when he is conflated with the god Ulagan. Charms known as Nazar are used by shamans to pray to this deity, who shares his name with the second highest peak in the Tian Shan Mountains. Yes.
Thanks.
Here's your bonus. Answer the following about controversial hydroelectric projects in American history for 10 points each. Sometimes referred to as America's worst industrial disaster, the construction of this tunnel to carry water from the New River to Galilee Mountain in West Virginia caused massive outbreaks of silicosis in 1931, resulting in the death of many Union Carbide employees.
That's not. It's in the US.
This is called the Hawks Nest Tunnel. Also in 1931, Herbert Hoover vetoed a bill named for this site in Alabama, where the Wilson Dam and the Oklahoma Tennessee River. The plants on this site, originally named for some mollusks, were turned over to the TVA in 1933.
Muscle shoals.
Indeed. While serving in this cabinet position under Kennedy and Johnson, Stuart Udall opposed the hydroelectric Rampart Dam in Alaska. This position oversees the Bureau of Land Management and the National Park Service.
Interior.
That's right. 20 points. 19. A device developed by Cohen and Warner called the Obel trap counteracts this phenomenon by means of electrokinetic feedback. A generalization of this process to situations of non-zero fluid velocity was developed by Krachin to investigate the passive scalars problem. It is possible to compute the Boltzmann constant from this process by multiplying the mass by the diffusivity and dividing by the product of temperature and relaxation time. This Wiener process is described by an equation that models the evolution of particle position distributions under the influence of drag and stochastic noise. That special form of the Fokker-Planck equation is the Smoluchowski equation. The mean square displacement of this process is given by twice the diffusion constant times the elapsed time. For 10 points, identify this process first elucidated in 1905 by Einstein.
So please write any motions.
Exactly what it feels.
Refund anyway.
I think so.
I don't know, what's the,
You guys want to score check now?
No, let me read the bonus. K622 is a concerto for this instrument, which is included in the Kegelsop trio, and was played by Bernard Krusel, who composed 3 concertos for it for 10 points each. Named this instrument also played by Heinrich Behrman, that is featured along with piano in an 1860 piece not composed by Chopin, entitled Grand Duo Concertant.
So what would be featured with piano?
Sure.
Cello.
It's a clarinet. That Grand Duo Concertant was written by this man who composed 2 clarinet concertos in 1811, one in F minor and the other in E flat major. His other works include The Invitation to the Dance and the opera Der Freischütz, or The Freeshooter.
Favorite.
This conductor's notable recordings include one in 1958 for EMI of The Freeshooter and one in 1954 for Decca of Wagner's opera Lohengrin. This man died while conducting the second act of Tristan and Isolde in Munich, just like Felix Molto.
The German guy who's like clever.
Because he died.
What you got?
Clever.
It's Joseph Kilbreth.
So
After 19, I have a score of 160 to 150.
115,
115.
so we have to,
You can theoretically type this.
Don't gag.
Here's toss 20. John Dennis published a pamphlet in defense of one of this author's characters as a reply to Richard Steele's weak critiques. One of his verses ends with the lines, "Chorus at worst do in the end, but change your lover for a friend." This author of the love poems The Forsaken Mistress and The Divided Heart wrote numerous original songs for his dramatic works, including When Phyllis Watched Her Harmless Sheep, which is sung by Aurelia and her lady maiden Letitia in a play subtitled Love in a Tub. That work, The Comical Revenge, was followed by a play about Courtaulds' attempt to woo Gatti, or Gatti, she would if she could. The protagonist of his third and final play, published in 1676,
Ford.
was inspired by his friend the Earl of Rochester, who eventually marries Harriet Woodville, and is named Dorimon for him, pointing this restoration dramatist who created the character of Sir Falkland Flutter in his The Man of Moon.
That's not. We're probably after power.
Well after that. The only known biological example of this type of reaction is catalyzed by Core's mate mutase, which each gave this class of paracyclic reactions exemplified by one's name for Claisen and Cope. They are described by an order of square bracket I, comma J, close square bracket, if you want. That gives the number of atoms in the migrating group in the pi system.
If you want to, go.
Reduction.
This is called a sigmatropic rearrangement. A sigmatropic rearrangement name for Cope involves the 1,5 type of these compounds that have two double bonds. In the Diels-Alder reaction, a conjugated one reacts with an alkene. That's right. The topology of sigmatropic rearrangements is described by this 11-letter word when the migrating fragment remains on the same base of the pi system during the reaction.
Penis.
That is not correct. The correct answer is superfacial. You receive 10 points.
Final score, 180 to 150.
Yeah.
I started to
That's right.
I can do it too.
Again.
When you said the only natural one of these reactions, I thought it was going to be about that like nuclear fission thing we were talking about at the top. That's what I was hoping. That was really